Good evening. My name is Nancy Weber, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to this community screening of Waking of Creek. After that, we'll hear from our prominent guest speakers, Pardeep Kaleka and Arno Michaelis, with a Q&A to follow. Tonight's event is part of Marin Stands United Against Hate Week, and we'd like to thank the City of Novato, Novato Police Department, Novato Unified School District, and North Marin Community Services for their partnership with Not in Our Town, Novato. Their support, it was very important in making this event possible. Many thanks to the staff who helped, as well as the volunteers from our Novato community. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Mayor Josh Fryday of Novato.
Thank you, Nancy, and thank you for organizing and being part of this. Welcome everyone to Novato. It's really such an honor for us to be able to host this incredible event tonight and to be able to have this important conversation, especially now with where our country is and the dialogue that our country is currently having. So to everyone that's part of Not in Our Town, Novato, thank you so much for your work to do this. It's so important for us. It's so important that our community is having these conversations and these dialogues. The work that is being done by all of you and by this group and the conversations that are going to be happening tonight remind me of a quote from Martin Luther King, who said, "This generation will repent not merely for the hateful words and actions of the bad people, but for the appalling silence of the good people." We must always be willing to stand up and not be silent. And that is what each of you, being part of this event, who helped organize this event, who came here tonight to be part of this, is saying, that you will not be silent. And that is so important, and I'm so proud that you are all here. I'm so proud that we have a packed room tonight. And when I think about our community, and I think about why we need to be embracing Not in Our Town and continuing to have these conversations, I think that for us, what's important is that we don't tolerate our differences among each other. We celebrate our differences. That we don't just accept minorities and immigrants, that we embrace them. And that when we think about our diversity, we don't approach it like it's a problem we need to tackle. We approach it for what it is. It's our greatest strength. And with that, I want to introduce someone who every single day wakes up to not just protect us, which he does incredibly well, but to make us better, and to make this community better, and to make this world better. And it is my honor now to introduce our very own Chief Adam McGill.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's a privilege to be here with you tonight. It's more of a privilege to serve for you and with you and the men and women of the Novato Police Department, who I have the honor to speak for tonight. Patrice, who you're going to meet shortly, the founder of Not in Our Town, just shared with me that Marin County has more events in the next week for United Against Hate Week than any other county in the Bay Area. So that's something to be proud of. And I'll just leave you with that. For us to do our part, we have the community we serve has to have faith and confidence in us. We know that when trust is high in the police, that people are going to be more likely to report crimes. When they don't trust the police, whether it's they think that we're abusive or we're part of the problem, or we don't care, or we aren't able to or willing to solve problems, then they don't report crimes to us. We know that's very true in our immigrant population. Your police department is not engaged in any immigration enforcement, but we need people to know the facts and to share that, because we know it's true that people are not reporting crimes, whether it's in domestic violence, victims of family violence or sexual assault or human trafficking. They're afraid to call the police because they think we're going to inquire about their immigration status. So it's events like this where we get to share that that's just not the truth. We have zero interest in that. We don't ask those questions. They have absolutely no relevance to us. And another call to action, I would ask you to share that at every opportunity you can. And that's just not what we're involved in. We have to have the trust of everyone in the community in every single neighborhood to keep them safe. And we're asking all of you to partner with us on that. So I will stop now and introduce Nancy, who's really been the lead driver who made this night happen. This came together very quickly. We're very grateful for Nancy taking a leadership role, and her whole team are all around in the back of the room and busy off places. So Nancy, back to you. Thanks again for everyone being here.
So thank you for the thank you, and I'd like our committee, the planning committee, to please stand up because they did work really hard. Jody, Michelle, Judy, Heidi, and Ross. Okay. All right. Let's get on with the show. So I'm pleased and honored to introduce Patrice O'Neill. Patrice is a filmmaker and CEO of the open-based nonprofit strategic media company, The Working Group. She's the founder and leader of Not in Our Town, a movement of people across the country working to build safe, inclusive communities for all. Her film, Not in Our Town, began as a half-hour PBS special. It turned into a dynamic movement that thrives in communities across the U.S. and around the world. For 20 years, Patrice has fostered a network of Not in Our Town activists. She's helped lead screenings and town hall meetings in hundreds of communities nationwide. Please join me in welcoming Patrice.
I just want to start by asking all of us, it has been a stunning 2.5 weeks. There's been so much loss, so much pain, so much tragedy. And so if we could just take a minute when we're here together, just for a moment of silence to remember all that have been lost. Thank you. I am happy to be in this room with people who are awake. The past couple of events that we've done during United Against Hate Week have been in sanctuaries. They've been in churches. And just remembering, starting with this story of tragedy, Oak Creek, Wisconsin, 6 people murdered. Then 2 years later, Charleston, South Carolina, 9 people killed while they worshiped. And now we have 11 people who were killed at the synagogue, the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh. What will it take for us to wake up and see the danger and the harm that's happening? And so I think as we sit amidst this sadness and worry, I told someone at the Fremont event is that I wake up joyful every day, even through this sadness, because I get to be with people like you. That there are so many more of us who want to do something, who are taking upon ourselves to take action. But this is an urgent moment. And so I'm glad to be here with you tonight and share a little bit about Not in Our Town. The story of Not in Our Town, I think is one that we have to remember now. It started with attacks on an African American church, on a Native American woman's family. Each time people in the community stood up, they said, we can't remain silent, with support from city leaders and the police chief who said, I can't do this alone. The culminating event took place when a 6-year-old Jewish boy placed a menorah in his window for Hanukkah, and a brick was thrown through the window. So people in the town knew that they had to show more solidarity. They started putting paper menorahs in their windows, and that year 10,000 people put menorahs in their windows. and the white supremacists left Billings, Montana. That is, of course, not to say that hate has ended in that community or any community, but it works. It works when we act together, when we see it as a responsibility for all of us to stand up to hate. And I think that's why people around the country took this story and made it their own. They thought about how they could be the painters, how they could be the people who put menorahs in their windows. It turned into a movement. We've been serving communities across the country ever since and learning from them, trying to pull together their best actions and feeding it back to them. We do it through our films, but also our website and through events like this that we do all over the country when communities call us in. So it was August 5th, 2012, when we heard the news in the morning of the attack on the Sikh Temple of Wisconsin. And we started calling each other and saying, what can we do? The following day, we got a call from Oak Creek, Wisconsin, the city of Oak Creek, saying, okay, here's what we're planning, what should we do? And we learned about the incredible readiness and response and the connection of these city leaders to the Sikh community, and we said we have to send our film team, which we did right away. And then we spent the next year in going back and back to Oak Creek to tell the story that you'll see tonight, Waking Oak Creek. After we see the film, we'll talk to my amazing brothers, Pardeep Kaleka and Arno Michaelis, who you'll see in the film. They have been traveling all over the country since this happened, and they have a tremendous story to tell. So thank you so much for being here and for allowing us to present this film to you.
Okay, 911, where's your emergency?
Yeah, I was just going to Sikh temple and I was in the parking lot and I think someone was shooting some guy with the turban.
He's in a church with a gun?
Yeah, because I can hear it in there. He's in there shooting people.
A white supremacist fueled by hatred walked into our local Gurdwara with a loaded gun. He killed my mother while she prayed. He shot and killed 5 more men.
I think this is an assault on all of us. It's an assault on anybody who's a Milwaukeean, a Wisconsinite, an American, a human being.
Tonight, we are celebrating the lives of 6 victims who tragically lost their lives on Sunday, August 5th, 2012.
I don't know anybody personally that goes to the Sikh temple here, but it still hits close to home. He very well could have walked into my church and done the same thing.
The whole point of a candlelight vigil is that light embodies the hope that we have amongst this darkness. That so many people were getting together blocks away from where this happened without any fear and with so much love. It was tremendous.
Here in the Milwaukee area, you never think that it would happen in your own backyard. But then again, on Sunday, it did. And we go to a point where it calls us to action.
In 28 years of law enforcement, I have seen a lot of hate, I've seen a lot of revenge, and I've seen a lot of anger. What I saw, particularly from the Sikh community this week, was compassion, concern, and support.
My dad, he was the first one to help protect that temple. It was his, it was ours. He lost his life.
to come early to prepare the food every Sunday. Usually talking about the family stuff, you know.
Me and my sister, we went outside, and then all of a sudden, a white man had come out, and he just started shooting randomly. I just ran inside as fast as I could to tell everybody before it was too late.
My husband was sitting having tea. Then he says, close the door, and he was on the phone, 911. Then he ran to keeping everybody away.
Oak Creek 911, where's your emergency?
We were having a fighting here in the police, the guy, white guy were doing firing. We need 911, quick. 15 around here.
Then we went to the dispensary. 15 people. We tried to quiet inside, you know.
7512 South Avenue. There is shooting.
Okay, did anybody get hit? Hello?
Somebody called and said, you know, your dad's been shot. So I called his phone and talked to somebody inside, and they said, get here, hurry up.
As soon as that call came in, I knew I was going to be the first one to arrive.
Squad, last I heard is a balding male with glasses may have gone inside with a gun and there were shots fired.
Shooting! Where the hell is it?
Let's get to Oak Creek, man. Hold on.
We were hearing the pop, you know, the bullet shots. We start praying.
We need help. Somebody shooting outside.
Yes, we've got help on the way, okay?
We have to hide now.
Stand with me. Okay? Ma'am?
Thank you.
I saw two men laying on the ground, one on top of the other.
I need an ambulance. I do not see a shooter anywhere. 10-4.
And just as I had started moving, I saw him. White t-shirt, lots of ink on his arms, black tactical pants, and a holster on his hip. We both shot probably at the same time. My shot missed, and he hit me directly in the chin, which traveled down my throat and ripped apart my larynx. I stood up, pointed my gun, and that's when he shot the tip of my thumb off. The gun came out of my hand. So I keep crawling, and that's when he shot me in the back of the head. I know I've been shot a ton at this point. And then a funny thing happens. It just gets quiet. And I just thought, I gotta fight.
We got someone walking out the driveway towards me.
As I drove up, I saw him, and it says something just wasn't right. That's why I backed up to access my rifle, and then I pulled back up. The glass sprayed me in the face. Put the front sight, followed him, and shot until he went down.
As the minutes went on, it just became more and more urgent, and I just wanted to know what happened to Dad. Is he all right?
I think I must have asked him about 25 times. Did you find my mother? You know where she is? Did you find her?
Receiving those text messages, you're standing on the sidewalk, you don't know who's alive and who's not, and all you can think about is, you know, am I going to see my parents?
I didn't know if I had hit him or if he just dove to get behind the cover.
Where's Murphy? We don't know where Murphy is.
Any further description if there's an additional shooter?
Just shot again.
He's still shooting. Figured I'm going to take the fight to him. If I run out of bullets, I'm going to run him over. I saw that he had a head injury, but I didn't know if I had hit him in the head or not. The round that we had heard was not fired at us. He actually put the gun to his head. Didn't want to be taken alive.
We had a lot of information pretty early on who he was and what he was all about. What he was wearing is indicative of a white supremacist to show I'm going to spill blood for the cause. Our role now is not only to protect, it's to make them feel safe, and not just in the Sikh community, but everywhere in my city.
The day after August 5th, my brother came into my room and I said, can we go after the neo-Nazi guys so that they don't ever think about doing something like this again? And my brother stopped me and he goes, look, You don't realize, like, we could either become weaker or stronger. If you retaliate, you're no better than them.
I used to cut my hair, trim my beard, depending on what I felt like each day. I'd always thought about taking the sarup, as we call it, of the Sikh faith, where you don't cut your hair, you keep your gaze on dadi. I thought about it, and I was like, maybe someday I'm not spiritually ready. And when the shooting happened, I felt like, if there's a day, it's today. And I wanted to show the world that even if we look different, we're still Americans, and we're still human beings. I'm not a terrorist.
I look at it that I confronted evil in the parking lot. He was looking for division. It didn't work that way. I think it drew people closer.
We're trying to remember what happened last Sunday. We're trying to come together as a community to reassure the families and heal together, I guess.
I'm affected by any kind of tragedy, but there have been several times where I just you struggle to like hold it together. It almost like shakes you by the shoulders and say, you got to wake up. You can't allow these things to happen. You can't allow hate to dominate a conversation.
Our thoughts and prayers go out to the families of the victims, for our wounded officer. There is no doubt in my mind that the heroic actions of our police officers prevented an even greater tragedy.
Sita Singh, 41 years old. Ranjit Singh, 49 years old. Satwan Singh Kaleka, 62 years old. Prakash Singh, 39 years old. Paramjit Kaur, 41 years old. Shubek Singh Khattada, 84 years old.
These were people who were walking alive just a week back. They are no more with us. We come together in love and peace and understanding rather than, hatred.
It can happen to anybody, any place, anywhere. Hatred, don't care where it goes. What hurt them also hurt us too. We're Christians, we all are brothers and sisters together. That's why we're here. We came to share their grief too.
Sometimes people think that when you go to a situation like this, it's over, it's done, you go home, let's do your job, you get back. It doesn't work that way. There were some pretty graphic things that went on there. They're trained to see that, but now when one of their own goes down, we need to heal behind closed doors in a group and come together and talk and cry. I would like to see them get some time to catch their breath, too.
She was a very hardworking woman.
She sacrificed what she wanted for herself to give us what we needed. Just working for 12, 14 hours a day just to put food on the table.
My dad was a strong person, a strong personality. He was gonna fight till the end. And sometimes it, rubbed people the wrong way, but he was also a very honest person, almost brutally honest. A lot of integrity. You don't know that you have these characteristics built into you until you need them. How can we look into the eye of a horrific tragedy? I seek solace in the fact that even in death, my father has done more to promote awareness of the Sikh faith than he did when he was alive.
How are you? Good to see you. Good to see you.
There's intelligence that is shared amongst the law enforcement community on what we can do now, who we're looking at. But when you're looking at raw data, let's pull the data out of the FBI files, this will not show up This is the hate crime incident report, and you can see what the hate was for. Because it's their race, their gender, their sexual orientation. And then religion, we have Jewish, Catholic, Muslim, other religion. So the Sikh community is not, there's really nowhere for me to put on here who they are. They're others.
Where are Sikhs? Where do we count our mother? What are they gonna say? 7,000 other died? That was a wake-up call, I believe, to all of us, where we needed to do something.
I know what happened at Oak Creek was not an isolated incident. I fear it may happen again if we don't stand up and do something. Senators, I came here today to ask the government to give my mother the dignity of being a statistic. The FBI does not track hate crimes against Sikhs. My mother and those shot that day will not even count on a federal form. I want to tell the gunman who took her away from me, you may have been full of hate, but my mother was full of love. She was an American. Despite everything, I still believe in America, American dream.
He became the first Sikh ever to testify before Congress in U.S. history. You know, and how many people can say that in the world? So it was definitely dear, close to our heart.
It was just for my mom.
You know, there's days you're sitting there and it's miserable. For me to get out of bed and walk to the bathroom was a major event. You know, I remember being in a hospital and members of the temple brought up letters and cards, and that makes you get up and move. The outpouring of gratitude and every aspect of support, they've been there. My wife and I never really went on a honeymoon, and we had tickets to go to the Florida Keys in 2 weeks. There was actually one point where I'm laying on my back and he shot me through the bicep, and I can just remember in slow motion the blood sprayed out of my arm, and I could just remember thinking as I'm crawling backwards, we're not going to the Keys. And I thought, she's gonna be mad, you know? I had been shot 15 times. I really can't feel anything in the forearm. I have half a thumb, some memory loss from the shot in the back of the head, but things could be so much worse. I'm very fortunate. Granted, I'm not thumb wrestling anybody or singing karaoke, but I could still do my day-to-day functions. The Sikh temple is on Howell Avenue, one of the busiest thoroughfares in Oak Creek. But how many people ever truly understood what they stood for, what they worshiped, what their lifestyle was like?
In our faith, God is everywhere. Sikhism was founded a little over 500 years ago in an area of India known as Punjab by who we now call Guru Nanak. We primarily believe in one God, and that all people from all different faiths pray to the same God. Regardless of your caste, regardless of your gender or where you are in life, you can find God just as easily as anyone else. You simply work hard and work honestly. You keep God in your mind, and you share what you have with others. And our God is defined essentially as the energy of the universe. As a scientist, we're really only trying to understand God in the same way that any spiritual person tries to understand God, just using different tools. And I think the concept for me, at least spiritually now, is trying to merge the two. Our lab in general looks at learning and memory, and I do that looking at how cells communicate amongst each other. These connections are the basis in how we are able to think, learn, and remember. The whole concept of Sangat, or community, in our faith is that you as an individual cannot find truth. We must learn together to find that truth. So we're always encouraged to pray in groups, to meditate together, to interact with each other, to eat together, to serve each other in that hope.
You never get used to coming into a scene where your dad took his last breath, murmuring, Vaigru, Vaigru, you know, please come save me. My mom used to be really involved in the Gurdwara and helping out all the time.
Still, it's hard for me. It starts shaking my heart and everything.
It's a hard obstacle to try to get over.
One of the things that was most important, I believe, for the Sikh community to hear was the clear articulation that this was, in fact, a hate crime. Not because it lessened the pain, but just because it gave them the ability to say, we are a part of America. They are our doctors, there are nurses, our teachers, there are masons, there are cab drivers, they are us. There is no one to prosecute here, there's no defendant for us to indict, but that suggests that we have a larger mission. And that is, in part, education. What do you take from an experience like this?
This guy was inked up to the max with neo-Nazi, white supremacist tattoos. Hate festers like a sore. It doesn't happen overnight. I wonder how many people ran into this guy and didn't know what he was about. As a law enforcement officer, you should know your community inside and out. You should get to the places that you don't normally get to. It's hard to say to someone else, don't be ignorant when you're ignorant yourself.
You can't go through this and not be affected. There's still emotion. It's not the raw emotion of the incident. All of us, I think, sense that there's a change here from it's a bad thing that happened, let's move on, to maybe we need to talk about how we can reduce the likelihood that it'll happen. I promised the Sikh community that we would continue to have events based on what happened here. Can we do something as a community to kind of change the discussion?
I think most folks in Oak Creek would say before this happened, I mean, we knew the temple existed, but in terms of interacting with the community and knowing what they're about, knowing how they live their lives was kind of a mystery.
You know, before this whole incident occurred, I really had a negative outlook on police officers, but we don't have those conversations to see they're humans.
We were right along the program. Come ride with me for a day.
I would love to do that, Sam.
Hey, you come and ride?
I will.
Every time I turn to speak to a crowd, I take a deep breath and I gather myself. And I hope that once we leave today, and we will both be messengers together to get out there and basically preach the message of love.
I've seen a lot in 28 years of how people hate each other and how they treat each other, but unfortunately that's where we're at. Someone who's always telling me their brother, their uncle, their sister, they're worried that they may be one of those people. And I look at them and say, well, then why didn't you say something?
I was a founding member of the same organization that Wade Page belonged to. So in many ways, I set the stage and I created the environment that he came from. The most frequently asked question is, how did you change? I was very fortunate that kindness was given to me by complete strangers who I was outright hostile to. And while these acts of kindness didn't change me on the spot, they planted seeds that grew in my heart that left less and less room for that hate and violence.
I think the country has gotten too used to stories like this. We don't feel each other's pain. Being awake means that you feel it. You feel Newtown. You feel it so much that you want to get in your car, drive to Connecticut, and be with the victims. But as you leave today, be awake.
I have a 6-year-old daughter, and I think about it every day. But I think we're making a difference. And for me, every day it's do the right thing, try to teach my children to do the right thing.
I'm sick of being passive, I guess. And today really helped out, like, seeing that I'm not the only one in the community who actually wants to help out.
I often say I have more faith in the kids than I do in adults sometimes. It's probably a naive statement in some extent, but kids are really going to drive this discussion.
Since that incident, people have started to believe like we actually had a problem where people didn't understand fully about other people's cultures or they didn't respect it.
We don't talk to many neighbors, but they came over and, you know, they asked how we're all doing, and it was just nice to see, like, even though what happened was bad, like, there was such a positive outcome. It brought our whole neighborhood together, our schools together.
This is a small thing, but it can set a ripple effect.
It made everybody feel like they were even like a tiniest part of something amazing.
I'm the commander of Post 434 Squadron, and I'm a retired police officer from the city of Oak Creek. As soon as this happened, members of the post all got together and said, what can we do?
Usually a Legion post takes care of its own members and everything, but we wanted to make this a community-wide effort.
We feel that heroes from all walks of life should be honored, not just military heroes. The way today's society is, we don't get to know enough about each other. What those 6 people's death did was help us better understand the Sikhs. They understand us better, and the two communities are now much closer together. We're not born heroes. We become heroes because of something that happens in our life.
Around the community this weekend, there are congregations who are remembering those who perished.
We've known what it is like to be attacked, to feel the sting of other people's hatred. That should cause us to do everything within our power to bring about a sense of the good.
When we are doing things in our world to make a difference, each community of faith can only do so much. And that's why God gave us another community of faith and another faith tradition. We each have ways in which we touch people's lives.
How does a community come together so quickly after something so horrific? And you have to understand you're the reason that that happened, the compassion and the forgiveness that you have. We want to remember the victims, never ever forget them. But what we want to be remembered for is the response and how we came together.
Last year, I was blessed by God to be given an opportunity to serve the Gurdwara, and for that, I will always be thankful. Like the other 6 victims who lost their voice permanently, and mine who has been diminished. That voice has been replaced by everyone here. The voice of Chardikala, the voice of going forward and moving ahead.
It's very difficult, obviously, to be up here in MC when today was the day that I found out my father was murdered. I was full of so much anger. If I do something constructive, if I try to help build community, I don't think about the negative side.
As for Wade Michael Page, there is no question that my father, and I'm pretty sure the other victim families, they've forgiven him and pray for his soul.
After they took my neck off, I started crying. And I couldn't stop.
Raise your candles for him. Guru, look out.
Guru, see there.
Thank you. Thanks for your love. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.
It seems like every time I get tired, somebody steps up and uplifts me, us, all of us.
As much as you were angry, as much as you were going through these feelings of grief, so was the rest of this community. And the rest of the community literally took their arms, braced them around you, and took that burden of pain away.
Yes, it makes a difference.
We can laugh, we can sing together, we can beat the drum together, we can be with each other, and that creates this healing.
Small towns, small cities in America, we can accomplish things that set examples. We can make a change that's real.
Wake up all the builders, time to build a new land.
We had all kinds of people come together today and walk and run 6K, 1K for each victim.
Chardikala means relentless optimism. You need to have hope that the moral arc of the universe bends to the good.
It represents a challenge. When people get to a point where they think that they can't make it, they search inside and dig in and basically keep going.
Guys. We gotta change it, yeah. Just you and me. World won't get no better. If we just let it be, let it be, let it be, let it be. The world won't get no better. We gotta change it, yeah. Just you and me.
So I'd like to bring up Pardeep Kaleka and Arno Michaelis, amazing speakers. They just finished a new book called The Gift of Our Wounds, which we'll talk about in a moment, about their incredible journey together. And we're so happy to have them here tonight. So, Pardeep, talk about, and I know you've done this so many other times, but one of the things that was so remarkable to us and to everyone who sees this film is the leadership of the Sikh community, particularly young people your age who reached out. What was your instinct in this incredible moment of grief that your family was going through? Why did you, that was almost immediate. Why did you feel that you needed to reach out to the community and what did you get back from it?
I want to thank everyone for coming out tonight. I know that a lot of people put in time, and this experience wouldn't be the same if any one of you was not here tonight. So thank you for being here. The response by the Sikh community, and I think a lot of times we get credit for the Sikh community, but I think the human family, what we do naturally if we're hurt is we heal. So if you got a cut, that cut will naturally heal by itself. Now we can help that process or we can hurt that process. We can prolong that process or we can help ease that process. Why we responded the way we did was we didn't want to be defined by what happened to us. We wanted to be defined by the response. And we felt an obligation not just to the Sikh community, but we felt an obligation to the broader community. At that time in 2012, there was 3 horrific hate crimes that happened within a short time of one another. We knew that if we didn't do our part to respond, the likelihood of it happening again would increase. Because what hate wants to do is divide. What hate wants to do is hurt you. Hurt you to the point that you can't respond, that you can't take control. So that's what we did at the time. We took control because we knew that this wasn't just the death of 6 immigrants. I knew that this just wasn't the death of my father, who had built that Sikh community within the Oak Creek community for 15 years as the president. And for anybody that knows Sikh politics, I see Sikhs here. If you know Sikh politics, nobody lasts 15 years running a Gurdwara. So, right or wrong. So he helped build that community. He died within about 8 feet of the exit door. At any time, he could have left. He knew his congregation was in there. He knew that my mother was in there. And he knew that he wasn't going to abandon. He wasn't going to leave like that. And so he died in the place that he helped build. In Sikhi, we call that hukum. We don't choose what happens to us sometimes, but we can choose how we respond. And so it just wasn't the death of 6 immigrants. It wasn't just the death of my father. What we faced was the death of an ideal. And the death of the ideal, we've been trying to resuscitate for the past 6 years. And there are forces that are actively trying to kill this ideal. So as we leave tonight, leave with a collective mission to resuscitate that ideal.
So Arno, I'm sure when you heard about this, it must have been shocking and horrific. Talk a little bit about, I think everyone knows that you spent a good portion of your life, or at least enough of your life to harm you greatly and harm others as a white supremacist, hating people. But when you heard about what happened at the Sikh temple, talk about your reaction, and then eventually about hearing from Pardeep.
I'd like to echo Pardeep, thanking all of you for coming out tonight. I understand this was a short notice event, so it's just amazing that we got a full house here. And I think that speaks volumes to who you are all as individuals and of Novato as a community. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you very much. August 5th, 2012, I was working as an information technology consultant at the time. In addition to being a former white supremacist, I'm a former IT guy. I'm not gonna go too far into that because it was just too traumatic for me. I can't go to the IT world again. But that Sunday, I was rebooting some servers, and I tried to do that after hours, and I'm not in the way to end users and vice versa. And I'm sure I'm the only IT guy ever to do this, but while the servers were rebooting, I was kind of ducking into my social media here and there. And I remember I was watching, it was a Twitter feed, and there was this hashtag of Sikh temple shooting, and all of a sudden I followed the hashtag, and it was just this river of alarm and sadness and shock and outrage and speculation, kind of like grasping for something, some piece of knowledge. There was reports of multiple shooters, multiple people died, multiple people wounded. I think there's been mass shootings before then, but that was the first one like I really remember that sinking in. And I'm heartbroken to say that 6 years later, it's just been a blur of mass shootings. Like that has happened over and over and over again. And most recently in Thousand Oaks, and a couple of weeks before that at Tree of Life in Pittsburgh. But on August 5th, I saw this scrolling by, and I just had a feeling that like I had something to do with this. And it was just a gut thing. I really didn't have any idea that it actually was an affiliated white supremacist that committed this attack. That didn't happen until later that night, but that afternoon I recorded a video response because I just felt really obligated to say something about it. And I had started sharing my story publicly earlier in 2010. So I had been like the former white supremacist guy for a couple of years. And I was really actively working to cultivate peace in society in the inner city of Milwaukee. So I was already like really dialed into this space and trying to find ways to help people live in harmony together and not be terrified of each other. So I made the video, and the video really was just to the gist of we need to see each other as human beings. That's the thing that drove the atrocity was the separatism, was people who were, as a man who willfully refused to see himself and others for a very long time, for a decade. And it had destroyed his life to the point where nothing but homicide followed by suicide seemed to make sense. And I had a grasp, and I actually made this response video before it was announced that it was a white supremacist. But I made it from the heart because drawing on my experience in hate groups for 7 years, from 1987 to 1994, I kind of knew all the intellectual and spiritual sickness that leads people to commit that kind of violence. As the day went on, it was announced that the shooter was indeed a white supremacist, and that's really all they revealed that evening. I'm not even trying to imply there's any kind of equivalency, but what I found for Pardeep that they sat for 10 hours 12 hours waiting to find out if their dad was alive or not. That horror of not knowing, that uncertainty. I lay awake that night wondering if the guy who killed Pardeep's dad and 5 other people was someone that I had recruited. Like, did I set this psychopath loose on the world? The next day it was revealed that his name was Wade Michael Page, and that he was, I believe, born in Colorado, and had been in North Carolina and California, kind of all over the country. I established that this wasn't someone I knew personally, but it really didn't take any of the urgency away, because it was also revealed that he was a member of Hammerskin Nation, which is an organization that I was involved with in its early days. So I had very much like set the stage that this guy walked off of. I helped to create the environment that created him. And because of that, I felt a huge urgency to respond, which still drives me to this day.
So, in The Gift of Our Wounds, I hope you get to read it. It's an amazing story between the two of them. For some reason, after a while, you decided that you wanted to reach out to Arno, this man who had been a former white supremacist. And before you talk about reaching out to Arno, talk about this discussion that you had with your brother, where he wanted revenge. He wanted that anger to be dealt with, and maybe almost as a self-defense. We need these white supremacists to know that we are going to respond. And you know, it was a discussion that seemed like a very natural discussion to have, and you turned it in the other direction. You turned it in the other direction. Talk about that, and then this impetus to go further, to really try to understand who this person was, who caused so much harm to your family and your community.
So by that time, when the shooting happened, I was 35 years old. We immigrated to Milwaukee when I was 6. At that time, when we immigrated, I was taking care of my little brother. Mom and Dad were both working. And this sounds like I got 4 kids now, and you'd be like, how does a 6-year-old take care of a 4-year-old? And like take him to school, bring him home, get him. But that was just the way that we did things back then. So growing up, I took care of my brother quite a bit, and I would go on to become a police officer in the city of Milwaukee. I did that for about 5 years. So I thank law enforcement for everything that you guys do, the sacrifices you make, family sacrifices. It's a hard job, and they need to be supported and commended for everything that they do. I became an educator after that. I was working in the same neighborhood that I was policing in, which was a very violent area in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And by the time the shooting came along, I just sort of had the wherewithal to understand what was going on. And so, even back in my policing days, I really stayed away from vilifying people to the point that I hated them. That was just kind of in my nature. It's like, if I end up hating you, then I think that you somehow have control of me. If I hate your guts that much. And the shooter, right away, we almost felt a sense of sympathy for the shooter. We felt compassion for the shooter right away. We knew that he was a boy that grew up in Littleton, Colorado, that probably suffered, that was hurting, that was ultimately rejected by the military, was ultimately rejected by people that he loved, and thought that rejecting other people would somehow minimize his own feelings of rejection. So, days after the shooting, we asked for a 7th casket. There were 6 dead, 7 including the shooter. And I remember the police chief kind of being like, Pardeep, we can't do that. We can't have 7 caskets. And just saying to him at that time, this needs to mean more than you understand it to mean. This needs to mean as much as forgiveness means. We need to change the narrative. And we weren't able to get our ways, but the thought of that, I ran into the chief about 4 weeks ago, and he's like, I've never forgotten that ask. I said, that comes from our background. That comes from, as S6. That's what we do. But knowing that we had to do that, and you know, my brother is fiery, he's a hothead, he, sometimes he gets a little carried away. And I think that's the little brother in all of us. It's the part of us that says, okay, you know what? I'm allowed to be angry. And yes, you are. Everyone here is allowed to be angry. That's a natural emotion. But like Arno says, you're not allowed to let that lead you by the nose. It has to be channeled. And me reaching out to Arno was me being able to channel my own frustration and anger. I needed a big brother. I needed to understand the why so we can do the what. And that was me reaching out to Arno.
We had a conversation earlier today about anger and fear and sort of the role it's playing in this moment, but also in our lives. And Arno, I want you to talk about that and reach back a little bit to your time in the white supremacist movement when anger and causing fear and feeling fear was part of what drove you.
In my case, the anger and really the fear, looking back on it, and it's important to understand that like back in the day, I would have been in staunch denial that fear was, I'm not afraid of anything. And you'll see that again now, not just in far right or white supremacist violent extremists, but far left or religious or whatever. Anytime you touch on that kind of passion that's channeled into violence, into hurting people, into separatism, there is fear behind it. And corresponding denial of that fear. It becomes this loop, actually. So like the fear is what feeds the anger. You get off on the anger and the anger's gone and you gotta whip it back up again, so now it needs more fear. There's all kinds of parallels to substance abuse. And in my case, growing up, I was lashing out at other kids because my mom was miserable, and I got stimulation from teachers and principals and kids' parents like tearing their hair out about what I was doing. And I felt a sense of power about it also, but the adrenaline was really what was there. And it wasn't as much fun if it was just like a roller coaster ride or jumping off a wall or something. And I think part of the reason I was driven towards the real negative aspect of my adrenaline habit was because of my suffering. Hurt people hurt people. Fortunately, not all hurt people, or we'd be in real trouble because all people hurt at one point or another. Most of us has healthy ways to process that hurting, but if we don't have a healthy way to process it, it can very easily be transferred to other people. So that's how my habit began as a kid, and it kept escalating as I got older. I'm an alcoholic as well. I drink profusely from the time I was 14 until I was 34. And the first time I drank till I passed out, which was maybe 4 or 5 beers. And by the time I quit drinking, I was like drinking 18 beers a night. That was the number I could function on the next day. If I had more than that, I wouldn't go to work. So you got to keep upping the substance to get the same kind of high from it. That led me from going to bully on the school bus, fights in the schoolyard, breaking and entering, vandalism. By the time I'm 14, I started drinking myself. By the time I'm 16, I'm a full-blown alcoholic. Like, my life already revolves around alcohol. I'm addicted to it. I'm familiar with violence. I've been violent since I was a little kid. I convinced myself that I liked fighting and that I liked to get hit, which was kind of a thing out of necessities. I wasn't very coordinated or a very good fighter, and I got hit in the face a lot. And hate was just another part of the rush. Just like, oh, no. When that anger is like going to the point of hatred, now it's just like, that's adrenaline. The adrenaline is like part of this rush. And that's who I was when I heard white power skinhead music. So here I am, this kid who from an early age gets off by pissing people off. That's my thing. And here somebody presents me with the idea of donning a swastika and being a warrior for the white race. Like, boy, that really pisses people off. This is like the main line, like, oh yeah. And I wasn't ignorant as to why it pissed people off. I knew about the Holocaust. But in the same way that like a heroin junkie is gonna know it's wrong to break in people's cars or to like prostitute themselves for their hit of heroin, they don't care, because all they care about is getting the heroin. And that's how I was with the swastika. I knew it was wrong, but I didn't care, because all I cared about was getting that fixed.
You know, everybody wants to ask this, and I ask you again, how did you get out? And I think you spoke about it in the film, and I know you've talked about it, but I guess, you know, the story that I've heard you tell a number of times is the one that I think works so well. You talk about how kindness just wore you down. And tell the story about the lady at the McDonald's.
The McDonald's story. So early on in my skinhead days, and this is when I was 16, I had just dropped out of high school because I'm a gifted genius. I don't know if I told you guys that, but my mom says I'm a gifted genius. So if I'm a gifted genius, what need do I have to go to high school? I already know everything. I don't need to go to school anymore. So I drop out of high school, tell my parents I'm not going back. They tried, both my mom and my dad were like, did everything in their power to try to get me to stay in school, but none of it was happening. They completely lost control of me by then. I was physically larger than my dad, and my dad, who never laid a finger on me growing up, some people may make the case that that was the problem. I don't believe violence is a good thing to interact with children with, but when I was a teenager, my dad all of a sudden decided he's gonna put the foot down. He's like, you're not going anywhere. He's like trying to physically stop me from leaving the house, and I like picked him up and shoved him out of the way. So that's like who I was at the time when the McDonald's incident happened. I was just adopting this white power skinhead ideology. I moved into a house with a bunch of punk rockers, and we were driving the punk rockers out and replacing them with skinheads. And I drank constantly. And another element of gifted geniusness here, I figured that if I ate nothing but ramen noodles all week, I'd have more drinking money. And this is not like legit, like, you know, crafted Japanese ramen shop ramen. This is like the 10 for $1 bricks of ramen. That's the kind of ramen I'm talking about. So I ate nothing but that all week long, and the only day I'd have anything different would be payday. Payday was Wednesday, and on Wednesday I would go to McDonald's and I'd get a supersized Big Mac meal with a Diet Coke. Then the Diet Coke, irony is always there. And it didn't occur to my gifted genius self that maybe if I didn't drink so much, I could have went to McDonald's more often. I don't know which would have been worse for me. But as it was, I had the Big Macs once a week on payday, and I remember looking all week long like, oh, is it payday yet? Oh, I can't wait for that Big Mac. And so payday comes, and I go to the McDonald's by the check cashing place, and I walk in, and as soon as I walk through the door, I'm like stunned by this elderly black woman who's working there behind the counter. And I'm stunned because she has this beaming smile on her face. Just like the most genuine, authentic human smile that you ever saw in your life. And it was like the sun. Like when there's not smoke in the air, and God bless all the people fleeing for their lives, it's killing me to think of that. But the sun, even through the smoke, shines upon everyone. It doesn't care what color your skin is. It doesn't care how much money you got or don't got. It doesn't care who you're attracted to. If you're a gangbanger, white power skinhead, or you work at McDonald's, the sun shines on everyone unconditionally. And this woman's smile shone like that. When I came walking through that door, and I'm like, I'm a white power skinhead. I hate black people. And I walk through the door and I see this woman smile, just like shrinking in it. I'm like, I feel like a complete idiot. Look how beautiful that woman's smile is. And so I go get my Big Mac, I'm very uncomfortable, and I go scurrying out. She's super nice as the smile would lead you to believe. The week goes by, I'm drinking, eating ramen noodles, printing t-shirts, fighting, making white power music, getting all the pissed off white kids around me. And now it's payday again, I go back for the Big Mac. There she is again. This time she remembers me. She remembers what I ordered, what I drank. She's asking me about my day. She's talking about the weather. And now I'm like really, really uncomfortable. I'm trying to hate black people, and this woman is like blowing all of that out of the water. It's making all of it seem as stupid as it is. And I don't want to face that reality. So I get my food, I go scurrying out of there. Week goes by, ramen noodles, drinking, fighting, white power, yada, yada, yada. We have a party that Saturday, as we had every night, but Saturday was especially crazy. And a guy came over with a homemade tattoo machine. Now again, the gifted genius strikes, and I'm like, I'm gonna get a tattoo of a swastika on my middle finger of my right hand. Specifically so that if some people get in my face, they're like, you Nazi, and they wanna fight me, I'd go, okay, yeah, I'm a Nazi, what are you gonna do about it? Like, that's why I got that tattoo, was to repulse people, was to cultivate hostility. And I certainly was not thinking of the sweet elderly black woman who worked at McDonald's when I got the tattoo. But the next payday rolls around, I go back to McDonald's, I come walking in, and once again I freeze in the doorway, because there she is behind the counter, and like involuntarily I'm just like, I don't want her to see this tattoo. And I put my hand in my pocket, and I'm sitting there, and I'm kind of like anxious, and I'm freaked out, and I'm like, doesn't anybody else work here? Like, everybody just wait a minute, like somebody else will come. No, she's the only one there. And I'm like, where's the next closest McDonald's? I'm contemplating like walking a mile to another McDonald's because I'm so intimidated at the idea of coming before this sweet elderly woman with this horrible tattoo. Ultimately, the siren song of the Big Mac prevailed, and I approached the counter. And as I'm approaching, she's like, oh, hey, how's it going? Big Mac again? I'm like, yeah. And then I'm thinking, gifted genius moment number 382. I'm like, I'll keep my hand in my pocket. But I gotta pay for it. I gotta take my money out of my pocket. So I'm trying to dig in my pocket, like with my hand the other way, and it's not working. And as I take the money out, she sees the tattoo, and she looks me right in the eye, and she's like, what is that on your finger? And I was already 6'3" tall at this point. I was probably a good foot taller than her. I felt like 6 inches high when she asked me that. And all I could do was like stare down at my steel-toed white power skinhead boots and just go, it's nothing. And she waited until I looked up again. And when I looked up, she said, I know that's not who you are. You're a better person than that. And I was just like, can I see my Big Mac, please? I got my food, and I scurried out of there, like ran for my life out of there. And I'd love to tell you that I went skipping out of McDonald's going, racism's stupid, she's so nice, I'm cured. But actually, I went back to my dingy apartment with my skinhead buddies, I wolfed down my Big Mac on the way, and I got as drunk as I could, as fast as I could, and I went out on the streets and I attacked the first person I could find. Because I had to put as much distance as I could between me and this singularity of humanity I had just experienced. And as hard as I tried from that point on, and that was another 7 years. This happened like within the first couple of months of my whole skinhead thing. For the next 7 years, I took everything in me to try to pretend that never happened. To try to just erase it from who I was and from my experience. But that's not how the human psyche works. Like once something happens to us, it is part of us from that day going forward, and really all we can change is our response, as Pardeep said. So it's just constantly denying the truth of our common humanity and the truth of this woman's bravery and her kindness and her forgiveness and her compassion. And ultimately that became one of the many factors that had me so exhausted I was looking for an excuse to leave.
Both of you talk about and really try to practice peace building. And Pardeep, I wonder if you could talk about what that means to you and how you try to do that in your everyday life. You moved from being a police officer to being a teacher, and now you're a therapist, and but you also continue to work in the schools. And talk about that practice in your everyday life.
Yeah, practice, and I think just coming to this country and being new to this country, I think immigrants are genuinely appreciative of the opportunity that we get. And since I was a child, I've always wanted to do something and give back to my community. My parents own gas stations. My mom graduated 5th grade, couldn't really get a job. My dad wore a turban and he was a farmer. So the first job that they got was working gas station. And over time, my dad made a pretty successful business out of it. But I always remember thinking to them and saying to them, there's something else. There's something else that and our mom would be like, what else is there? Like, I don't know, there's just gotta be something else. And I think even at that time, that I was practicing gratitude. I was practicing being grateful without understanding what that really meant. So that's what, when we go into a life of service, and you go into being a police officer, I was grateful for the community that I was given. I was grateful for the opportunity. And that moving forward, while I changed careers, I never wanted to get away from being grateful at life. Grateful for everything. And with that said, sometimes I found myself taking things for granted. When the shooting itself happened, I remember having a nice life. My wife was working, and we both had sort of a middle class lifestyle where we had money in the bank. We could go out to eat on Friday, Saturday nights. We could buy whatever it is that we really wanted to buy. As a new technology, new phone came out, we could go and get it. We had 2 children. We kind of had this kind of prototypical middle class life. And that was when August 5th happened. And really, my daughter forgetting her notebook and us being 10 minutes away from the shooting made me come back to, you could have just lost everything, including your life. As a father, could you have protected your 4-year-old and your 6-year-old? And that question between what happened and what could have happened is what haunted me for the longest time. And so I remember after the shooting, it was hard getting to sleep. It was hard just trying to stay in conversations, because no matter where I went, even if I was in this place, I would literally picture a shooter coming through that door right there and saying, okay, where's the safe wall? Where's the safe spot? Can I get to that place? What could we all do about it? I was actively picturing somebody coming in and shooting the place up. If I was at a Starbucks, if I was anywhere. And so these images kept going through my head. When I started to really sit by my children's bed and you know, kind of watch them sleep. They're little kids, and I'm sitting there and I'm watching them sleep. And I would just sit there probably for like half hour after they slept. And then my wife would come to me and she's like, okay, like, come on, let's come to bed. I'm like, oh, okay, yeah. I just kind of was just sitting here. That was my safe spot, that was my sanctuary. I didn't think a shooter was gonna come in then. And then just kind of thinking to yourself, wow, you're going through something. Right? You're going through something. And this something, as tragic as it was, as sad as it was, made me come back to being grateful. Made me come back to having gratitude. And you know, we often have a thing that we say to survivors and say, okay, you know, you're going through post-traumatic stress disorder. I say to people all the time, I'm diagnosing you with PTSD. But we often don't talk about how people that go through something and come out of it are going through post-traumatic growth. Where life is worth living once again. And you're more grateful than you ever thought that you could ever be. And that's kind of the practice that I want to take, or like we want to take going forward. That is hopefully the message that we got through in our books. You know, the gift of our wounds. And we hope that you get a chance to read it. If it doesn't suck, post a review. Only if it doesn't suck.
6 people have said it doesn't suck. We still got a 5-star rating.
So Arno, talk about practice for you. You said it in the film too, is that you practiced hate every day. It's what you did. It became familiar to you. You got good at it. And how did you begin to practice not hating? And what do you think we can learn from that in this moment?
Being a man of extremes, I went from being a vehemently violent, racist, neo-Nazi skinhead to being a raver. Shaking my ass to house music at 4 in the morning on Sunday on the south side of Chicago in some filthy warehouse with 3,000 people of every possible ethnicity, gender identity, sexual orientation, socioeconomic background, nationality, religious background, you name it. And I spent another 7 years doing that. And the mantra of the rave scene was then as it is now, was peace, love, unity, and respect. Like, that was really what it was all about. And it was such a healing environment for me just to realize the possibility of people just loving each other unconditionally because they're fellow human beings. Like, for no reason. Unconditionally. Like, this most beautiful, deep, genuine love, which I'd feel on Saturday night for everybody at that party, but then Wednesday, when I'm back doing my day-to-day, and just going about my business, and I'm walking on the street and I see some dude, and I'm just like, I love that guy. Like, that possibility and the beauty of it is still there. And the people I met in the rave scene modeled all of this for me. There was a time when, can you hold this part? I was at some party, I was sitting on the floor of some filthy roller rink, and this whole 4-sleeve tattoo used to be a big pile of skulls and swastikas, and I had like a SS dude here, and it said white power there. There was no bones about like what it was about. And I'm sitting on the floor, and I'm sitting with this girl, and she's got my forearm in her lap, and she's going like this. Like on the tattoo, and she's like, what's that about? And I'm like, oh, I used to be a Nazi skinhead, I feel really bad about it. She's like, well, you're not like that anymore, are you? I'm like, no. And she's like, okay. And like everybody in this scene, most of whom were, by the way, people that I would have attacked on site just a couple of years earlier, just forgave me and accepted me on the spot and gave me the benefit of the doubt. And that was really like my introduction to what the world could be like if peace, love, unity, and respect, which nowadays to me translates as kindness, forgiveness, gratitude, and compassion. Like that's the more like operational approaches, I think. What the world could be like if you practice those things. And what practice does for a human being is it changes our comfort zone. It takes something that was previously outside of our comfort zone, it brings it inside our comfort zone. By the Pacific Ocean here, a thing I've been passionately in love with ever since I first saw it, I tried to surf 4 times in my life. Every time the ocean kicked the living mess out of me, and I loved every minute of it. It was last May down in San Diego that I stood on a surfboard for the first time in my life. I rode for a glorious 5 seconds. The greatest 5 seconds of my life, except that one time I had sex. Now, I want to practice. That's all right. Kids know how they got here at some point. I want to practice learning how to ride a surfboard. And then last time I went, it started to get more comfortable. Like it started to seem like, hey, this is actually possible. I could be one of those dudes who surfs all the time. Like that's the nature of practice. You can bring something that's way outside your comfort zone into your comfort zone. That's what happens when we repeat things and we're repetitive about it. That's why we go from amateur to professional, from novice to adept. And that's great when we intentionally practice something, but far too often, and all human beings are susceptible to this, we practice things that aren't very healthy for us. If we practice getting angry every day, if we practice blaming other people, if we practice beating ourselves up, if we practice being discouraged, the more familiar we get with those things, the more they become our comfort zone. And in the case of Wade Page, and in the case of me back in the day, like I was comfortable with hate and violence. And when you're comfortable with those things, you're not only uncomfortable with things like love and kindness, all these beautiful things about being a human being, you're repulsed by them. So your salvation terrifies you. It's an incredibly miserable situation to be in, and I'm very lucky that I got out. Because people who are very adept and well-practiced in things like kindness and acceptance and forgiveness set that example for me. So that's why it's all the more important that all of us practice those things as often as we can.
So I'm gonna, not in our town, practice isn't exactly like a rave, but I think I like to think that practice is what Not in Our Town is all about. How do we practice in our community this kind of healing, this kind of reconciliation, this kind of uncomfortable conversation that can get us to another place? How do we practice being with each other and being with people that we aren't ordinarily with, and to get to know each other and break down those barriers? So I want to start that practice. We have so little time, but I want to open up the conversation to all of you with Arno and Pardeep and about this practice and about any questions you might have or comments about where we are and what we could do together this evening. Anybody want to start? And who's doing the mics? Nancy, are you?
And there's nothing off limits. If a question occurs to you, they're like, oh, I don't know if I should ask it that, like that's the question they want.
Hi, thank you so much. That's exactly what's on my mind. Is it can feel so helpless in this world where all of these tragic events are happening. And I hear you talk about this individual practices that we can take to be in the right mind. What else are you? What insights has all of this, the events you've been through and the practices you've had? given you on what we can do as community members to make change. What's on my mind is gun control, and what insights you have on that.
So we do a lot of work on issues like gun control, immigration, and socioeconomic, equitable conditions, public health, mental health, you name it, and we probably have kind of worked in that field. I think just like Arno said, that within those fields, we have to come back to that practice of compassion and understanding rather than judgment. We need to speak to rather than speak at. We said it earlier, but our psychological mechanisms are being revealed. And we are seeing people impose, and now we can address it. As a therapist, I kind of like to see somebody come out and put all their cards on the table. But I get that there's a bad and a good with that, because sometimes when you put all your cards on the table for everybody to see, and especially as we see leaders do it, sometimes other people feel like they're emboldened to do the same thing. So I can speak from a sense of privilege of being a citizen. I'm kind of financially doing all right, and maybe the other people don't have that ability. So I fear for them, and we need to advocate for them. We need to advocate for those people that don't have voice and might not have good standing, and say, okay, because we live in a leaderless society right now, we all need to look in the mirror and become leaders. And maybe that's something we step back from for a long time. And maybe the silver lining of where we are within the country right now is to say that we all are leaders. Let's look in the mirror rather than looking out of windows. And yeah, and
I think also, and I am all the advice I give, it's because I need this advice desperately. So, I never assign intentions to people who piss me off, but I do all the time, and that's what we have to be really wary of. I think often of my father, Arno Michaelis III, who is an amazing guy. He's my hero. He's done all kinds of crazy stuff. He has all kinds of crazy talents. He's one of the smartest people I've ever been in the presence of in my entire life. He has this massive, palpable intellect. It's also gentle and fun and kind. Pardeep just met my dad earlier this year for the first time. But my dad is he's a fundamentalist capitalist. Now I say that as I'm a moderate left-leaning capitalist. I think capitalism's great, but I don't think that the best thing about it is that you can never get too much of it. My father believes that if you let the invisible hand run amok enough, it will solve all of the problems that humans face if we just get the damn government out of the way. Right, we've all heard people who say this kind of stuff, and far too often, again, myself included, I'm like, you're a psychopath, that's why you want everybody to have guns, and you want the government out of it because you want the rich white people to have all the money. I assign all these really evil, mean intentions to my dad. And my dad, honestly, as little sense as this makes to me, he thinks that the more guns there are, the safer and happier everybody's gonna be. He really, really believes that. And he's very smart and he's very compassionate. Same with economically. He really believes that if we somehow tame the government enough, that everyone would be so much happier and so much more prosperous. But those are his intentions behind these positions that seem really just flat out stupid to me in all kinds of ways. And I remind myself that my positions probably seem flat out stupid to him. And that assigning intentions can go every way, from the point of hey, I wish we could all have health care, and somebody's like, oh, so you want to be like the Soviet Union, right? You want Stalin and Pol Pot and Mao to come and put everybody in the gulag. It's okay, there's some leaps, but how different are they from the leaps that I'm making to my dad's ideological position? So that, like, just that awareness of, first of all, what we're doing, like, call yourself out first and foremost. And then once you're done calling yourself out, call your team out. Like, if you're a Republican, call out the Republicans from your side. Be like, hey guys, we can be better. We gotta be better. If you're a Democrat, call out the Democrats from your side. Being like, dudes, we gotta do this better before we can go calling out other people. And I think that kind of self-awareness is it's gonna be a survival trait for us. Because we need to develop it or we're gonna have a really hard time, as the skies indicate today.
Coming, Jen.
I'm curious, did I miss how you two met?
How we met?
Sorry, can you repeat the question, please? I'm curious how.
Like how we physically met? How we like, met for the first time?
Yes, please.
Yeah, I don't think we have talked about that, how we first met. So, was it 2 months after the 2 months after the shooting?
It was October 22nd, 2012. It's our
His
40th anniversary.
How did we meet? We were linked through, at that time we were both working for a global think tank around violent extremism called AVE, Against Violent Extremism. And I reached out to the organizer, or the guy that was running that think tank, and I told him, I said, hey, there's this guy in town, he was a former white supremacist, can you give me his email address? And then they put us in contact. And then once we were put in contact, we decided, okay, let's like physically meet. And when we physically met, obviously there were like reservations on like, I'm gonna meet a person who is a former white supremacist. I know that he's lived this lifestyle. But what do people believe about people who would live this lifestyle? That do white supremacists ever change? So some people would say no. That once a racist, always a racist. So that was what was going on in my mind. In Arno's mind was, what is he going to say to somebody that lost his father? And so we both had reservations. We decided to meet out anyways. And the first time that we actually talked, I asked him, I said, where do you want to meet out? And he told me, let's meet out at a Thai restaurant. And that kind of like helped relieve some of that angst that I had. And I was like, oh, like white people can barely handle spicy food. I don't, yeah. Well, that's my, like I have prejudice too. so I have those prejudice on like, okay, white people can barely handle spicy food, let alone a white supremacist. If he would have said, let's go to a bar, grab a drink, I probably would have like pumped the brakes on him and, you know, made up an excuse. But anyways, we decided to fight that angst, to be courageous, to keep moving forward. And definitely there's something very spiritual about all that. So with that sense, like fear, sometimes when courage or when fear looks like courage, it's intimidating, right? It's very intimidating for fear to look at courage. And sometimes fearful people who are being manipulated by their fear, they can't look at courage either. And that's not to say that like neither one of us, but I think that a lot of discussions that we have with people, courage is looking at fear, and it's showing up in different ways. We decided to meet and really just keep moving forward. And the first time we met at this Thai restaurant, and I was wondering, I'm like, what am I going to talk to Arno about? What is he going to talk to me about? What is he going to say? What am I going to say? And the first time that I saw him, he's inside the restaurant itself, and he's next to two Asian waitresses. And that gave me a sense of relief, because I was like, in my mind, I'm like, at least they're still standing there. Some of these two Asian waitresses are standing next to him, and I don't know what I was thinking. I'm like, is he gonna eat them or something? Yeah, I don't know. But I was glad that they were standing. They were having a good time, and so it just came forward, and he asked me the question. He's like, "Dude, what happened to your eye?" So he asked me like, "What happened to my eye?" And in the midst of all the nervousness that the week was bringing, like there was so much going on at that time. It was just ridiculous. And the week before, I'm giving my daughter a bath. And in the bathtub, at this time she's 6, my son is 4, and my son didn't care. He was like, okay, go ahead, just give me a bath. You know, you take a little scrub and wipe him down. But my daughter was getting to that age where she was like, Dad, don't look at me when you give me, like when you scrub me down. But you know, like I know my wife, and if you don't scrub her down good, she's gonna be like, you just ran water on her. So I'm like trying to turn away, trying to respect her wishes, and like scrub down. I'm like, okay, here we go. In the corner of the bathtub, there was this like the spring rod poles. Anybody got a spring rod pole? So it's one of those spring rod poles that you put down, and within that, the loofah, there's a loofah hook about this big, and you like try to put your loofah on it, take your loofah off, and my wife was like, you really need to take that loofah hook off because it's kind of sharp. Me sort of being the, you know, I put things off, and I put it off, and you know, at that time, I'm trying to look away, I'm trying to look forward, I'm trying to look away, and I come forward, and all of a sudden this loofah hook goes through my eye and comes out the other side. And so, I mean, luckily it went through quick, came out quick. But then I'm like, uh-oh, like, you know how you just know you messed up? I'm gonna say a different word, but you're like, uh-oh. and so, I'm like, what am I gonna do? So I take the rod thing and I just pull the whole rod and the spring off the wall because I can't get the thing out of my eye. It's in my eyeball. My daughter panics and she like grabs the rod, she's pulling it, and I'm feeling the back of my eye kind of throbbing out. I'm like, oh, it's really in there. And I'm like, baby girl, you gotta let go of the rod. Let go of the rod. And luckily she lets go of the rod, and then I just kind of grab the whole thing. I'm like, what am I to do now? And so I take the hook the same way that it went in. You can't just pull it out. So I take it back out, and all of a sudden when I take it out, blood is just splurting all over the place. And I'm like, oh no. So I tell the kids, I'm like, go get dressed. We're gonna run to the hospital. We run to the hospital. We didn't get in the car. We ran to the hospital. And I'm running, and they're like following along, and they're like 4 and 6, and I get to the hospital, and it's a urgent care walk-in place. And they looked at me and they're like, nuh-uh. No. You can't bring that here. I'm like, oh my God. So on the way to the hospital, I'm on the phone with my wife, and I'm like, hun, you're not gonna believe what I did. You remember that hook that you were telling me that? Yeah. And so as I'm going out, she's on her way in, and she's like, get in here. So I jump in the car, we get to Fryday. Fryday is like the big complex over there, and the doctor's like, you know, Pardeep, you gotta be one of the luckiest people I know. I'm like, oh yeah, tell me about that. And he's like, if it was over just a millimeter, you would have had a glass eye. And then, so the week leading up to that was that. And I'll get to your question just 1 second. Right? So the week leading up to that, and me being a typical immigrant, I didn't want to I didn't want to make a big deal out of it. And I didn't want to go to the doctor after that to have surgery. But my eyelid wouldn't shut or close by itself. So I would literally have to go like this. Like I would have to physically move my eyelid to blink. Looked kind of ridiculous. So what I did was like, okay, I got the smart idea to say, okay, I'm gonna take athletic tape and just leave my eyelid open like this. Once I did that, I was like, oh, now how am I gonna blink? So I like that entire time I would blink, like I would just leave it open like this so it would stay open. And then it would get dry and I'd just go like this. and that's when I met Arno, when I was going through that. So all of this worry about what we're gonna talk about, how we're gonna do things, just the eye brought us together, and then really like Dad broke the ice. that broke the ice of saying, you know, you don't have to worry about what you have to say. Something is happening here, and you just, and I saw him cringing, and I saw him, like, when I was telling him the story, as worried as I was of him still being a white supremacist, he was like, and we knew right then what we had to do moving forward. We had to weaponize empathy. We had to weaponize people actually caring about one another and feeling for one another.
I'm interested in what drove you when you were 16. I know you understood the circumstance in your life that created the environment that you were susceptible to being in the white supremacist movement. But I'm interested in terms of our community, what that looks like when you're indoctrinated or how you're approached. And then by the same token, the way you explained, you know, how you got out of it. And the story that 8 years later led to something more. In terms of us helping in our communities, seeing the things we can do with individuals that might be on the edge. Because I'm thinking that's the way that we, besides living our lives in an honest, caring way, but actually seeing the people in front of us who may be invisible to us, in terms of being able to see them as individuals and approach them to make a difference.
I think what's really crucial is, first of all, to understand, and all teenagers go through this to one degree or another. Not all of them are to the extreme that I was, but many are. And that is that the suffering person in question is going to be lashing out at what they see as the status quo. So for me, in the late 80s, I saw the status quo of contemporary United States society as one of multiculturalism. This was like the days when all the white kids were starting to listen to rap. They were listening to Public Enemy and NWA. Interestingly, I was one of the first white kids listening to rap. I was a breakdancer a couple of years before I was a skinhead. In the mid-'80s, I was listening to like Run DMC, Grandmaster Flash, and I'd go to the roller rink and do breakdance battles. And then all these other kids started doing this, and I'm like, okay, that's lame. I'm not going to do that anymore. And so that got me into punk, what brought me to the white power skinhead thing. And if somebody could have convinced me at the time that the status quo of the United States was one of oppressive white supremacy, like I very much could have become like an Antifa. And I'm sure I would have been violent one way or another because I was suffering, but it was just like, that's how arbitrary it was. It just so happened that at my place and time, I thought the biggest way to be a rebel was to be a racist. That made all the sense in the world to me. And as many progressive people are like, no, you weren't a racist, you were perpetuating, or you weren't a rebel, you were perpetuating the status quo. Like that's not how I saw it at the time. So be aware of that. If you guys got an amazing community, and you guys, I believe, like Tamara said, and like she said, like you appreciate diversity, you see it as an asset. And if that's the status quo in your community, that's awesome. Like that's what we want. But for that kid who's suffering and who's isolated and is not connecting with people for one way or another, or the kid who feels rejected because he can't get a girlfriend or because people don't talk to him or for whatever reason, if he feels rejected and he sees the status quo of this community here as one of diversity, it's just logical for him to be like, yeah, well, I'm rejected because I'm white. I'm rejected because I'm a white man, and all, everybody's talking about how horrible straight white men are. Well, I'm a straight white man, and all of a sudden, the victimhood sets in, and the sense where he's the one who's oppressed sets in, and that we need to be mindful of that dynamic happening in that kid's head, while maintaining the values of the community and this true love for diversity. And tragically, and I can relate to this as well as anybody, but a lot of times when kids or when individuals or you get a group of people start expressing these abhorrent beliefs that's offensive to the rest of the community, the first thing we want to do is just like get them the hell out of here. Like, get them out of here, no platform, you're not welcome here, get out. I can't blame anybody for feeling that way. I certainly feel that way myself. I don't like being around people like that. It sucks. But that can do nothing but exacerbate the problem. So as difficult as it is, we gotta be like, hey dude, can I tell you why I think diversity is awesome? Like, let's sit down and talk and have a conversation and listen to them. As ridiculous as their views may seem, you've got to create that space for them to express themselves and for them to feel heard, because that rejection is what's driving their hateful, violent ideologies. And if we defy the rejection, being like, no, you know what, I accept you. I accept you exactly as you are right now. I want to help you get to a better place. I want to be your friend. I care about you. But you don't have to jump through any hoops to be accepted by me. When you can demonstrate that kind of radical acceptance, then you are proving that all the fear behind his ideology is unfounded. And that's the most drastic blow you can deal. There's a lot of like very well-meaning people who are like, smash the patriarchy and I hate white supremacy. And like, I don't blame anyone for feeling that way, but it's not going to accomplish anything. White supremacy is composed of hatred. When you present it with more hatred, and this is delicious, give me more. Patriarchy is composed of aggression. You're never going to out-aggro it. You're never going to aggro it out of existence. So we need to be mindful of those tactical conditions and then figure what our objective is. If our objective is to have a peaceful society where everyone is valued and included, we have to show that fear is unfounded. That's probably the most important aspect of it.
Mindful of the fact that there are so many other people who want to speak, and we want to have that time, but I think we have to leave City Hall now. So Nancy, I think you wanted to tell people what we can do next.
If you have a few more minutes here, hopefully you're leaving tonight inspired and believing kindness and forgiveness will change the world. So we have a few calls to action here. First, we're still looking for the leaders, the types of people that Arno and Pardeep were talking about, concerned community members and volunteers to join our grassroots group. There's a sign-up sheet outside where you can leave your name and contact information. We'll contact you, either NIOT Novato or NIOT Marin will contact you shortly, because I know some of you are not from Novato here, so it's great. But for those who do want to join NIOT Novato, our next meeting is Monday, December 10th, from 5:30 to 7 at the Novato Unified School District office on 7th and Grant. Again, December 10th, 5:30 to 7, that's a Monday, at 7th and Grant, the school district building. Another thing that's happening here in the city is we have a multicultural advisory commission. We are accepting applications right now for commissioners. There are actually 7 spots available. So check the website, the city website, and you'll find more information about that. And thank you again for participating in this event. Have a great evening. One more hand for